matchup of the year in the Big Ten, maybe the matchup of the year in college football. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Best in discussion, debate, and analysis. Please like the video and subscribe. And, of course, we're breaking down Ohio State and Oregon. They have yet to disappoint. Both come in undefeated. Ducks looked bad their first couple weeks. They have been dominant ever since. Ohio State pretty much dominant from the beginning of the season, although they have yet to be tested. The competition against the Buckeyes has obviously grown in intensity every week. A good, decent Iowa team went to Columbus last week and stayed with the Buckeyes for a half. Couple Ohio State turnovers in the first half and also a stop on downs near the red zone for Ohio State on offense. Kept Iowa close, and then the Buckeyes broke loose in the third quarter and dominated. Key statistic, this one courtesy our buddy Tony Gerdeman of Buckeye Huddle. Ohio State leads its opponents in the third quarter this season 84-3. Sounds like good halftime adjustments, and then maybe just a bit of a reckoning in the locker room. Guys looking at each other saying, we're better than this, we're better than them, let's go out and kick butt in the third quarter. Ohio State 9-1 all-time against Oregon, but of course the last time these two got together, it was the Ducks pulling off a 14-point upset in Columbus in 2021, 35-28, C.J. Stroud's second ever start. And of course, Oregon's running game ran wild on Ohio State. We don't expect that type of Oregon rushing attack against this Ohio State defense. And of course, before we get to the 2024 matchup, a couple more notes on yesteryear. Of course, two huge matchups between these two prior to that 2021 game, and that Ohio State team finished top 5 in the nation, won the Rose Bowl, did not win the Big Ten championship. Oregon went to the Pac-12 championship game, lost to Utah, and that was Mario Cristobal's final team at Oregon. But I'm talking the 2010 Rose Bowl. Buckeyes won it by 9. Jim Tressel over Chip Kelly, and then, of course, the 2014 national championship game in which Ohio State turned it over 4 times, gained 0 turnovers, 4-0 turnover deficit, and the Buckeyes won by 22. That team was just that good. Okay, these teams, let's start with the Ohio State offense and the Oregon defense. All eyes on Will Howard, awe-inspiring eyes on all those Ohio State weapons. But I'm going to bring up what I was awed by in watching the Buckeyes demolish Iowa 35-7. That's the Ohio State offensive line. Buckeye fans, name me the last time the Ohio State offensive line looked that good against a quality, I mean really good defense. The Iowa defensive front may not be what it's been the last 3 or 4 years, but as a total defense, and especially the linebacking core, exceptional. The Ohio State offensive line was near perfect in that game. Pass pro, exquisite. Will Howard hitting on 21 of 25. Did not have to. And this is going to possibly be an adjustment for Will Howard. Don't get too used to that kind of pass protection. If you saw Oregon against Michigan State last weekend on a Friday night, I would say that the Ducks were more dominant against Michigan State. And this is a difficult comparison to make, but it's the only one we have right now. Common opponent, Michigan State. Ohio State went to East Lansing, 38-7 win. They won by 31. Oregon won by 21 at home. That sounds like a better Ohio State effort, but if you watch the two games, and I did, I thought Oregon was more dominant against Michigan State, completely obliterated Michigan State after an early Michigan State drive and fumble inside the 5-yard line. Oregon took it from there. They had some turnovers. Dylan Gabriel, we'll get to him, that kept it somewhat respectable, and Michigan State scored the final 10 garbage points. But back to Will Howard, clean pocket all day last Saturday in Columbus. That's not going to be the case, regardless of how good the Ohio State offensive line may prove to be. Maybe they just had a one-off exceptional effort, or maybe they're just this good. Donovan Jackson, as I mentioned on the left side, coming back 3 weeks ago, paired with Josh Simmons, have solidified that left side. Seth McLaughlin was rated the number 1 offensive lineman by Pro Football Focus in Week 6 play, as, of course, Ohio State's new center coming in from Alabama. We had a great conversation. Check this one out with Eric Skopel of Ducks Territory, breaking down Dillon Gabriel struggles in the passing game. This is not an future NFL quarterback here. Dillon Gabriel is going to turn out to be the most prolific, barring injury, the most prolific quarterback in the history of college football. But those are stats. He may not be the best quarterback in this conference, even though he's been rated as such during the off season. I'll take Drew Aller and Miller Moss for sure, and maybe after this game, we'll make a call on Will Howard. Will Howard asked to run the ball quite a bit against Iowa. We'll see if that's part of the arsenal, and I would expect it to be against Oregon. The way I expected Chip Kelly and Ryan Day to play it this season with Will Howard as a runner was, let's see if we can beat a team with Will Howard as the quarterback and not a runner, because we got two great running backs and we've got all these weapons on the perimeter. And then if we need him, if we need that extra dimension, maybe this team is loading the box and Will Howard's not able to stretch the defense with his arm, we need that JT Barrett-esque Will Howard component at quarterback. But Ohio State went with it this past week. Couple bad decisions from Will Howard, but then again, a clean 21 of 25 for the most part. Jeremiah Smith had a fumble. Emeka Egbuka had a remarkable game with 3 touchdowns. This is the best wide receiver core in all of college football. Jeremiah Smith, he learns from his mistakes. He caught a ball in traffic. He was stretching out that play. Always understand that there could be traffic coming from behind you. And Jeremiah Smith learning from his mistakes. And yes, ever since the Oregon defense was done having to chase down Ashton Jeanty in Game 2 against Boise State, a game that they actually played pretty well on defense. In Jeanty's 25 carries, 15 of them, Oregon bottled him up. It was just the 10 other runs that he ripped off 150 yards. But, he may be the best in the business, but they may be facing two of the other best in the business. Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. Yeah, the offensive line gave them creases. Did not give them Mack truck size openings to run through against the Iowa defense. No one will against that level of defense. But I was impressed with the combination of this offensive line working with the backs and then knowing where to hit the hole, where to make the cuts, how to ride their offensive linemen. Just a clinic by especially Judkins in this game. Power and speed. Not one power and one speed. They both have power and speed. Judkins a little bit more physical, but I got to say Travion Henderson, a finesse back early in his career as the 5-star coming out of high school, who was relying on fleet athleticism and being able to turn that corner and just turn on the jets, has become a physical runner. Don't get in this guy's way. But again, Judkins just a little bit more power. Again, the Oregon defense dominant the last 3 games after a sluggish start. And again, just one of those games against Boise State. Just couldn't stop Jeanty and couldn't tackle him. And a lot of that had to do with him. They had 5 sacks against Michigan State. They were all over Aiden Childs in that game. Gave him no time to throw on hardly any of his dropbacks. Jordan Birch has had an exceptional year thus far. Mateo Uiagalelei, of course, another tremendous player. Maybe the best defensive player for Oregon through the first 5 games of the season has been the Michigan State transfer, Derek Harmon. That's the Ohio State offense against the Oregon defense. Corner and safety were issues for Oregon last season, and no argument that those were the weak spots for the Ducks last season. They've shored those areas up, still not elite in the secondary as they match up against, again, Egbuka and Carnell Tate, and we see that he will be back and ready to play Brandon Inniss as well this week for the Buckeyes. And I would have told you as we switch to the Oregon offense, I would have told you before the season, and I believe I did at some point, that Tez Johnson was the best wide receiver in college football. Now, Tez Johnson has done nothing negative with 43 catches and a ton of explosive plays. To discount that or to bring down or lower his stock, it's just that guys like Ryan Williams at Alabama and Jeremiah Smith have been that good. Is Dillon Gabriel the left-handed Will Howard? Well, I think Howard's got a better arm. Not by a whole lot, and Howard does not have a howitzer for sure, but Dillon Gabriel, a bit of more of a soft tosser, even more than I remember or evaluated him as being at UCF and Oklahoma. Gabriel definitely, like Howard, mobile, but not flashy, not dynamic, explosive, but extremely mobile, can hurt you with his legs. But again, as a passer, Dillon Gabriel has to be spot on. He's got to be efficient, make great decisions, and he cannot try to throw a ball that reminds us of a Brett Favre shot, because he just does not have the arm to do it. There is less room for error with both of these quarterbacks, but I think especially Dillon Gabriel. I know statistically Ohio State faced the best runner on the schedule thus far and leading rusher in the nation going into the game, Caleb Johnson of Iowa, but Jordan James is a better runner than Caleb Johnson. He is a violent, physical runner with a burst. With the first step burst. Caleb Johnson needs some time to get rolling. And these three backs are pretty similar in that they can do it all as a running back, not talking about pass pro and talking about receiving skills, but as a runner with the football in their hands, they can do it all. Again, I mentioned Tez Johnson coming into the season. I would have said best wide receiver in the Big Ten. Evan Stewart's been a great compliment coming from Texas A&M, and Trayshawn Holden caught a ball on his back last week. If you saw that, that was pretty remarkable that he was able to do that. He's a really good wideout as well. And Terrence Ferguson at tight end, this might be the difficult matchup for the Buckeyes, because the secondary of Ohio State against the Oregon wide receivers, that is epic, that is classic, that is something I think Ohio State can handle. Not that they're not going to get burned or give up some plays. Of course they will. But Terrence Ferguson, Sonny Styles had his best game against Iowa. He will probably have to have his best game in a different way if he's matched up against Terrence Ferguson this week. And again, Oregon wide receivers, Ohio State defensive backs in a game that's full of just exquisite matchups. That might be the one to watch above anything else. Will Jack Sawyer and JTT get to Dillon Gabriel? Will they affect the passer? The Ohio State pass rush in recent years, since they have added these 5 stars along the defensive edges, has been much maligned. It's not being consistent enough. And of course, Tyleik Williams is back, stuffing the middle against the run, providing the push against the pass as one of the best interior defensive linemen in all of college football. But that Oregon offensive line is exceptional. They made changes early in the season. They got the right players in place. They made a change at center that have made them better. They better not forget to set the edge as well, those Ohio State defenders. Don't just go to Dillon Gabriel. Set the edge, because Jordan James, once he gets to the outside, he is mighty dangerous. Oregon, of course, has lapsed in the kicking game. Previously, they missed kicks against Washington that cost them big last year. That was not a strength. But Oregon brings in a sophomore who makes a 50-yarder against Michigan State. But that is not a place where Dan Lanning wants to be. Late game with a kick to win it or tie the game. He would rather go out there and have his defense hold, or the offense have to make a play, because this is not a good situation. Again, it's not necessarily a bad situation, but a questionable situation for Oregon on special teams in particular. If you believe in the travel being an issue in college football, in terms of being an impact, I should say, Big Ten teams are 1-8, the ones that have to travel at least 2 time zones. We've got 2 enormous matchups coming up on Saturday. Ohio State coming from the Eastern time zone to the West Coast against Oregon. Penn State doing the same thing against USC, so keep your eye out on that. I don't think the sample size is big enough, but 1-8 with UCLA being the only home team that's lost against a road opponent that's had to travel that far. All right, here's your prediction. Buckeyes win over the Ducks in an excellent football game. I think Ohio State is clearly the better team. That's my thought today. But with Oregon making some plays. They're at home. I think the home field advantage, something that I think is overrated typically, is not in this case. The Autzen faithful keep the Ducks in the game, urge them on to a superior effort, but Ohio State too much in this one. Buckeyes 27, Ducks 24. Keep it locked in here at the Voice of College Football. Of course, you get all my predictions as a premium member on Patreon, patreon.com/MarkRogersTV, or right here on YouTube as a premium member on YouTube, as well as Steve Merrill's Under the Radar selection that is exclusive here at the Voice of College Football. Steve is 24-8 since the first week of 2022. We will have post-game, of course, and instant analysis on this one, Oregon, Ohio State, as well as all the big matchups in Week 7, right here at the Voice of College Football.